My name is Dean Tennant.
And my name is Eddie Tennant. We are brothers who have set off to cruising with the eventual goal of circumnavigating the globe.
This is our passage from Beaufort, North Carolina to Marsh Harbor in the Bahamas. Here we have just departed from Beaufort, and Eddie is running the main reefing lines. So you can see that we are only a couple of miles offshore, getting ready to set sail very soon.
We departed from Beaufort on a Saturday night. For a few brief moments before we reached the Gulf Stream, the Atlantic Ocean was flat as a sheet of paper.
The first problem we encountered was that our wind vane steering system broke as soon as we deployed it, a gear on the back completely stripped out. We had an electric autopilot for a backup, so we were able to complete the passage with no problems.
The thing that is important to know about offshore sailing is that someone has to be on watch the entire time. 24 hours a day. Someone has to be ready to respond to a change in the weather or anything else that happens. To split the load evenly, we took 4-hour shifts. 10 to 2, 2 to 6, 6 to 10, etc. One would be on deck for the shift.
Most of the time there wasn't much to do but look for other ships or adjust the sails to changes in the wind. Or eat. The other, who was off shift, usually spent the whole 4 hours sleeping. The hardest two shifts were the 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. and then the 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. shifts. Even with large amounts of coffee, it was difficult to stay awake. One of my favorite ways of describing offshore sailing is that it's an exercise in sleep deprivation.
The first 2 nights were spent mostly getting the hang of living in a space that is constantly at a 15-degree angle and rocking back and forth in large swells.
I got seasick pretty bad and couldn't keep any food or water down. This lasted about 24 hours. By the end of the second day, I was beginning to recover and get my strength back.
So I am off watch right now, and most of the time I spend my time off watch sleeping while Eddie is on watch. But I got a little hungry, so I made some pasta with spaghetti sauce, some pasta with tomato sauce. And so that's you can see how much the gimbal on the stove is. We're really healing over quite a bit. So that makes it hard to keep my composure, constitution a little bit while I'm down here cooking and not laying down. But I mean, I've made it. It's just cooling now. Should give me some sustenance, give Eddie some sustenance. I made enough for him.
At the end of the third day, we ran into a little baby gale. Winds gusted up to 35 knots and it poured rain. The waves were up to 10 feet and we rocketed along under a triple-reefed main. In the middle of the night, we lowered the main and raised this little sliver of Genoa. It was a rough night, but by 4 a.m., the wind started to die down. The next morning, we were becalmed. There wasn't a breath of wind.
We had expected to be in the Bahamas by this 4th day, but the storm and the doldrums the next morning killed our progress. Day 5 at midday we arrived at the Bahamas. We were just about to enter the Sea of Abaco through Whale Cut when the engine died. We threw as much sail up as we could and headed back out to sea away from the reefs. The conditions were not good for sailing into Whale Key, and we had been relying on our engine. The sun set, and we had to head back out to sea for the night.
It is important to note that it is never a good idea to approach an unfamiliar port at night. It is especially not a good idea in the Bahamas. The channels do not have any markers or buoys to show where they are. You navigate by seeing the reefs and rocks in the water. At night, there isn't enough light to distinguish the reefs from the channel.
Right as we turned away, Eddie managed to get the engine started again. We were glad to have it working, but the fact that it was too late to enter the harbor felt more like salt in our wounds. We were in very low spirits as we plunged into the night.
The next morning, having gotten the engine working the night before, we motored into the Sea of Abaco and into Marsh Harbor with no problem. It was late on a Friday afternoon, and I got to the customs office just in time to clear in before they closed.
That evening, we went to a restaurant in Marsh Harbor and had some delicious conch burgers. Then we returned to the boat and each collapsed into our berths, completely exhausted.
A couple days later, we went over to Man o' War Key and went ashore to explore. It was a Sunday, so there was not much going on. We had a nice time walking around the little island. There is an awesome beach where we could see out where we had been sailing. Abaco slopes south, at least in the NPR, so Florida is that way. Where we came from, Virginia. And there were a lot of cool buildings. There's one covered in pink conch shells.
See, here we are, looking at the Atlantic Ocean. That is the Sea of Abaco, and that is the Atlantic Ocean.
That evening we were super tired. We still hadn't caught up on our rest from the offshore passage, so we cooked a pork loin which we had been saving and had a delicious meal. A couple of days later we made our way over to Hopetown on Elbow Key. We had a nice time exploring.
We took turns exploring here. One of us went ashore while the other stayed and did laundry. After a couple hours we switched. It was a Tuesday afternoon, so there wasn't much going on. When I went to see the museum, which I'd heard so much about, I found that it was closed from damage during the Hurricane Dorian in 2019.
Back of the sanctuary, St. James Memorial Church, or Methodist Church.
Back on the boat that night, I baked cookies with some Reese's Pieces. The next morning, we motored over to Little Harbor. It was a nice little community, though we didn't stay there long. We wanted to use it as a staging ground to go offshore to Nassau, the capital of the Bahamas. We had to wait for a nasty weather system to pass through. At our anchorage there, we got some excellent snorkeling in.
The next night, we had a pretty rough experience. We were getting very high winds, and the boat was rocking the anchorage. Go cruising, they said. It'll be fun, they said. Dean, what are you doing right now?
We woke up to the boat lying a hull, which means that we were turned sideways to the wind. Which, you know, when you're at anchor, you're supposed to be pointed directly into the wind. We were.
So in layman's terms, something was wrong.
Yeah, something was wrong. We were rocking the wrong way. So what that means is that the anchor was dragging. So Eddie ran up to pull up the anchor, and he realized the chain had no resistance. He pulled it up and got to the end, and there was no anchor at the end.
There was no anchor on our anchor chain. So we're right now man, we are really thankful that we had the foresight to go ahead and rig a second anchor that would live on the pulpit with the first anchor. We could be motored to a safer, well, not right on the lee shore location, and drop down the backup CQR anchor. And then that leads us to this. We decided that if we were gonna be in this situation again, we want to have another backup anchor. So we got out our fortress anchor, and
which of course was buried.
Yeah, which of course was buried under everything in the lazarette, and went ahead and put that together. And now, if we have to wake up in another couple hours and run out, we have a third anchor we can go ahead and set out. In addition to, at that point, if we have to set this out, we'll go in there and get the fourth anchor, which is a 40-pound Bruce anchor. We'll put that, we don't need chain for that, but we'll put that on some line and go ahead and have that ready to set out too. And in the off chance that a second anchor breaks, and then a third anchor. We lost a 70-pound Rockna anchor, so we're gonna have to go look for that in the morning. Well, as you can see, here is golly, I think I let out 75 feet of chain to a 70-pound anchor. And you know, the anchor's a bit overpowered for this boat. We have a lot of chain out, so I thought we're not going anywhere. Well, when this is all that's left of your anchor, you're certainly not staying too long. Man, always check your hardware, folks. We thought this is one of the strong points, but this right here is a swivel that's snapped, and it doesn't matter how much chain you put out if you got no anchor at the end of it. So yeah.
All right, we are about to go try and retrieve our 70-pound Rockna. First, we have to go find it. I have a marker on my phone, like showing where we were anchored last night before the anchor broke free. Here is some of the gear that we have. We have a dinghy anchor, of course, so that we can get ourselves set right over top of it. Some mask fins and snorkel, and some line to swim down and tie to it once we find it. Alright, there's Eddie in the water. He's searching for the anchor right now.
We spent hours searching for that anchor, but it was gone. We were unable to find it. We have several backup anchors, so it's not the end of the world, but it did delay us in our departure for Nassau.
Look out for the next video to hear about our trip over to Nassau and spending a few days with our parents.
And as always, guys, remember, if you like this video, don't tell anyone. Keep it to yourself. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.